The lock-in effect in California is easing as new listings surge in March, causing housing inventory to increase by more than 50% from the previous year. In today's California housing market update, I'll share all the latest trends we're seeing right now so you can be more informed. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Jason Walter, a realtor here in Sacramento. I've been making these monthly videos regarding the California housing market update for years now, and I absolutely love it. So if you're new here, of course, please consider subscribing. Of course, if you're looking to make a move to Sacramento, then please reach out as well. I'm going to do my best to share unbiased reporting regarding what's actually happening right now here in California based on my own analysis of the California Association of Realtors data, which I'll share with you guys here in a little bit. So with that said, let's begin today's video, and thank you everyone for joining me. I appreciate you guys so much. I am jazzed to share this video with you guys. So this is covering the month of March, the most recent trends we have from them. They do a fantastic job regarding analyzing what's happening in the market. This is really like a 60-page document, but I'm whittling this down to the nuts and bolts, the things that you guys should definitely be aware of. And I'll share some trends we're seeing regarding home prices that you won't see anywhere else because it's based on my own nerdy analysis, right? All right, I'm such a nerd. Anyways, I'm just jazzed to talk about today's video because the market's been kind of stale, but we're seeing some changes, which is kind of exciting for me to share with you guys. Anyways, we're talking about, in today's video, only looking at single-family detached houses. So in other words, we're excluding brand new home construction. So brand new houses that are selling, it is excluded from this report. So anyways, looking at that for the state as a whole, home sales rose by 4.9%. This is year to year, which means March this year compared to March of 24, it's up by nearly 5% for the state as a whole. Now prices, based on the median sold price, was at $884,000. This means that half the houses sold below that amount and half sold above that amount. That's the median number. That is an increase of 3.5%. which is actually much softer compared to the long run average. I'll share with you guys regarding that here in a little bit. Unsold inventory index, which is basically the month supply, is at 3.5 months, a big increase up by 35% year over year. Days in the market, this is a time frame, when you list your home for sale until you accept an offer from a home buyer and then your house closes. These are based on closed transactions. So this is a lagging indicator, just like the closed home price here. Anyways, we're at 22 days, a giant increase up by 22%. But this is really a large percentage because we're talking about very small numbers, right? On average, homes selling about 3 weeks. 1 year ago, it was 3 days faster. So 3 days longer to sell a house compared to 1 year ago, a giant increase up by 22%. All right, anyways, let's talk about sales. This is pretty crazy because look at this. This is sales over the past several years, going back to January of 2005. Again, we're up by 4.9%, down 2.3% compared to the previous month. But look at this. I mean, we're basically approaching the third year in which sales are at very, very low levels. We have been paid at these very low levels for quite some time. I mean, historically speaking, we should be seeing around 400,000 is the seasonally adjusted rate. Now we're less than 300,000. So the levels of home sales over the past year and a half or 2.5 years is more or less in line with early of 2008. Here's something also been reported on the channel for quite some time as well. We're seeing more sales of luxury houses or more expensive homes selling compared to more affordable houses. So for the month of March compared to 12 months ago, home sales for over $2 million surged by 16%. Up by 5% in the range of $1 to $2 million, and then decrease for most of these other price tiers, except for this one, up by 3% in the range of $500 to $749,000. So therefore, sales at the top in the market are continuing to increase, but not increase at the same levels we saw in years past though. Speaking of that, let's take a look at that because over the past 1 year, here's a chart looking at the different price tiers going back to February of 2024. And again, these are all based on the percent change on a year-over-year basis for these different price tiers. What I'm kind of going to focus in on this, of course, you guys can pause it, do your own research on this, or do your own analysis. I'm looking at the sales for over $2 million. So back in the spring home buying season of 2024, we saw sales over $2 million increasing by more than 50%. That's this line right here and this one right here. Now it's only up by 16%. So even though the growth rate is still much elevated compared to these other price tiers, it's way below the levels you saw about 1 year ago. And of course, we've been seeing this kind of downward trend for the past 3 months now as well. So for example, back in December, we saw an increase of nearly 40%. Now we're less than 20%. In any case, because we're seeing a rise in home prices over the past several years, I'll share some pretty shocking trends regarding that compared to 5 years ago and 6 years ago. I mean, it's pretty eye-opening to say the least. I shared this chart for years now. I really like to share this because looking at pre-COVID is right here. So sales for less than 500,000 is the dark blue line. Sales for over $1 million is the gray line. So back in pre-COVID years, we had around 15% of all home sales were for over $1 million. Now it's at a staggering 36.1%. So we actually have more home sales for over $1 million than we do for sales for less than $500,000 here in California. And like I mentioned, I'm in Sacramento. I mean, back before COVID, a $1 million home sale was a big deal. Now it's kind of like more normal. It's more normal to see home sales and houses being listed for sale for over $1 million, which is just pretty eye-opening to say the least. All right, let's change gears here and talk about pending home sales, a measure of home buyers getting their offers accepted. So houses for sale, that's part of active listings. And once the home buyer gets their offer accepted from the home seller, it becomes a pending home sale. And then about 30 days later here in California, it becomes a closed home sale if the sale is finalized. So in any case, pending home sales decreased for the fourth consecutive month. So on a year-over-year basis, pending home sales are more or less flat from March of 2024, down by 0.9%. This implies that home sales or closed home sales will remain relatively muted over the past couple of months because, again, it takes around 30 days. The escrow process is around 30 days from offer acceptance to you get your keys to your house. All right, changing gears again, let's talk about home prices. I have so much to share regarding this. So if you guys are getting any value so far, then please hit the like button. I greatly appreciate that so much. Anyways, all right, let's talk about this. $884,000 is the median sold price, a giant increase up by nearly 7% month over month. Again, I'm going to share some trends regarding that. That is actually normal. Year-over-year basis up by 3.5%. So you guys can see we have this kind of like this seasonality in home prices where prices really tend to peak in the spring home buying season, early summer, and then decrease in the winter months. Happens virtually every single year, except for obviously when we had 3% rates back in 2020. Prices absolutely skyrocketed that year. So in any case, what I'm getting at is that we're seeing a kind of a seasonal increase in prices this March because that is actually normal. Let's have a look at this though, because this is not normal though. I'm going to share how the trends we're seeing right now compared to years past, going all the way back until 2010. So again, we're at 884,000. That's the median sold price for the state as a whole. And by the way, in about a week or so, I'll post a video going over each of the counties here in California as well. If you guys do want to see that video, then please leave me a comment below. I don't tend to post as often as I have been on this main channel. I've been having other endeavors, and I have a second YouTube channel in Sacramento as well, which you guys may have seen in your feed potentially. I don't know. It depends how the algorithm works. Anyways, I digress. So 884,000 it is pretty crazy because 1 month ago we're at 829,000. At that time we're down by 79,000 from the all-time record high of 908,000 that was set back in May of 2024. Now we're less than $24,000 away from that, and here we are only in March, right? Home prices tend to peak around May or June each and every year, and we're very close to the record high set back in about 1 year ago. Another thing I want to mention regarding this is that closed home sales based on closed home prices in March is really what the market was like 1 month ago when the home buyer got their offer accepted, which of course was February. And back in February, the average 30-year fixed rate was hovering around 7%. But despite these elevated rates, home prices surged only again about $24,000 shy of the all-time record high set back in 2024. All right, let's talk about this year-over-year change. So prices are up by 3.5%, which is an increase compared to the previous month. Back in February, compared to February of 24, we were up by 2.8%. Now it's at 3.5%. So this is far lower than the 9% average during this time of year. Based on my nerdy Excel formula here, this is technically a Google Doc. In any case, based on that, the average March year-over-year change going all the way back until 2010 is a giant increase up by 9%. That actually honestly surprised me. A 9% average increase since the year of 2010 is pretty mind-blowing. This is much less than the 3.5% gains we saw this year. So what does this all mean? Let's talk about the big picture here. We're no longer seeing double-digit growth rate like we saw back in March of 2022. Back then, prices surged by 12%. And of course, we're not seeing this giant surge in home prices due to affordability constraints, elevated prices, and rates. However, given the increase of inventory, which I'll share with you guys here in a little bit, given this rise of inventory, as well as elevated prices and rates, I expect home price growth to be subdued in the near term. It's all about the balance between supply and demand. Supply is rising. We're seeing home sales at relatively low levels, which is going to cause home price growth to be muted, in my personal opinion, in the near term. All right, let's have a look at the month-to-month change in the median sold price from 829,000 to 884,000. That's an increase of 6.7%. Obviously a giant increase, but this is normal. It's normal to see prices increase in the spring home buying season. A gain of nearly 7% is also very close to the all-time or the averages since the year of 2010. The average February to March change going back to 2010 is an increase up by 8.1%. This year, we're up by nearly 7%. Again, I don't expect prices to surge this spring, given the level of prices, mortgage rates, and of course, economic uncertainty as well. And also on top of that, the rise of inventory as well. Lastly, I want to share this with you guys regarding prices, and then we'll move on. I added this. Prices have increased by a staggering 44% since March of 2020. Since March of 2019, over the past 6 years, on average, home prices rose by 56%. All right, going back to this slideshow from CAR, let's look at the sale price to final list price ratio. That was virtually unchanged from 12 months ago at 100%. This means on average, out of all the houses that did sell in March, they sold for the seller's asking price. This, of course, is much different compared to around January of 2023, when back then the ratio was at around 96%, which means that homes on average sold 4% below asking. But also this is way lower compared to the craziness of 21 and early 22, when homes were selling about 4% over asking. Now they're selling for the asking price on average. Additionally, the share of houses that are selling over the seller's asking price actually jumped to a 7-month high. Around 40% are selling over asking, so about 4 every 10 closed home sales in March sold for over the seller's asking price. This is only slightly below last year at 47%, but also way lower compared to around 70% back in March of 2022. Back in April, we're at 73%. I get a lot of comments on my channel regarding, it doesn't matter regarding mortgage rates. The only thing that matters is home prices. And I would beg to differ, because look at this. Back in September of 2022, let me kind of just take a step back here looking at this chart. The orange line is the percent increase compared to the previous year in your mortgage payment. So that's your principal and interest. So obviously it has to do with the increase in rates, right? So the orange line is the increase in mortgage payments, and price growth in California is the blue line. So what happened in the early parts of 2022 and also mid 22 is that your average mortgage payment growth absolutely skyrocketed, right? We went from around, September 21, your average payment increased by only 10%. But by the time we hit, 1 year later, September of 22, your mortgage payment growth surged by 50%. That means your average housing payment to buy a house in California in September of 22 was 50% more expensive compared to the year prior to that. Absolutely insane. Even though prices were relatively flat year over year. So this increase in your mortgage payment was really due to the fact that average mortgage rates went from 3% to about 8% by the time we hit the fall months that year. The reason why I'm mentioning that is that this is one of the main reasons why we saw a big decrease in sales, and of course a decrease in home prices as well in the early parts of 2022 or 23, I should say. Whereas this year, we're only seeing a growth rate of up by 1.8%. And home prices up by 3.5%. So we're not seeing this shock like we saw in 2022 this year. And because of that, I do not expect to see a sharp correction like we saw in early 2023 this year due to this main reasons here. All right, moving on, let's talk about inventory levels. Something I want to share regarding that is that I want to share how California compares to other states. And a really good way to share this with you guys is looking at altosresearch.com. So here's the US as a whole on altosresearch.com's website. According to them, there's around 702,000 homes for sale. This is actually very close to the peak we saw back in late last year at around 739,000. So level of houses for sale in the US is higher compared to the past several years. However, it's still below the same time frame in April of 2020. This is for the US as a whole. Let's look at California though. In California, you can see here inventories higher compared to the past several years, but still less than 2020. It is increasing at a fairly fast clip this year, which is much different compared to 23 as well as last year. We'll have to keep an eye on this to see what happens because we're very close to the peak last year, which is unusual because inventory tends to peak in the late summer months, early fall months, and not in early April. Now looking at Texas though, this is a different animal. Look at that. Inventory right now is higher than any other week since keywords at least late April of 2020. That is Texas. Arizona is this right here. Same thing, higher than any other month as well. And Florida as well. I mean, Florida inventory has been increasing greatly ever since January this year. Also way above last year and the past several years as well. In any case, I want to provide that context because every market's different. I mean, you can look at the state as a whole, the nation as a whole. You can look at different neighborhoods. You'll see a different story here, right? Let's look at this though, because this is the month supply. I don't want to make this video too long. The inventory right now, or the month supply is at 3.5 months. 1 year ago, it was at 2.6 months. It increased compared to 1 year ago, but we are seeing a modest decrease over the past 2 months. This is normal. So even though we're higher compared to last year this time, it's still going on the downward trajectory. Let's also have a look at the percent change of housing inventory, the total amount of houses for sale here in California. That increased by 54.3%. year over year. That's actually the biggest year-over-year increase since January of 2023. So the growth rate of inventory is basically at a 2-year high, a little bit over a 2-year high right now. This also marks the 14th consecutive month in which inventory has increased compared to the previous year. The rise of inventory, like I mentioned earlier in the video, should slow down home price growth here in California. One of the main contributors of this rise of housing supply is due to the fact that we're seeing more people opting to list their homes for sale. Last month, that increased by nearly 25% from March of 2024, which also marked the third consecutive month in which new listings increased by over 20%. So last month, we had 19,873 new listings compared to the previous years. All these figures here are March, going back to March of 2018. So just under 20,000 new listings. That's higher compared to the past couple of years, but we are still lagging behind pre-COVID. So for example, back in March of 2019, there was 26,377 new listings. Now there's less than 20,000. So even though we're up by 25% or 24.6% year over year, we're down by 25% from March of 2019. Let's also take a look at the share of reduced price listings. Are we seeing price reductions absolutely skyrocketing or not? So right now, the share of price drops is at 33.8%, which means that around 1/3 of all homes for sale in California, for the month of March at least, have already reduced their asking price. So about 2/3 have not reduced their asking price. So what we have been seeing is that the share of price drops has been decreasing for the past several months. Also, around 3% for the month of March is actually a little bit normal. Back in March of 2015, we're also around that level. Same goes for 16, 17, 18 as well. With that said, if you guys are looking to make a move in California, then please reach out to me, Jason at meetjasonwalter.com. I'll provide my contact information in the video description below as well. And also, if you guys got any value out of today's video, then please hit the like button. I greatly appreciate that as well. Have an amazing day. I appreciate you guys so much, and we'll see you in the next video.